Hello my friends, the story of the film begins with a young man named Eddie trying to commit suicide by jumping from the window with some people trying to break into his apartment and kill him. Home for weeks and months without finishing writing a single book. He has only Lindy in life, his ex-girlfriend, who tries to help him as much as possible, and meets Werner, his ex-wife's brother, who invites him to a bar and reassures him about his life and conditions, who later learns that his life is ruined and tells him that he is currently working as a consultant in a pharmaceutical company. He is presented with a capsule exclusively produced by his company and authorized by the drug department. He tells him that a normal person uses only 20% of his brain, but this capsule will make him use 100% of his brain's intelligence and ability, and its price is only $100. Eddie agrees to take it and use it just out of curiosity. He decides to take the capsule, where he meets the owner of the house at the same time, who asks him to pay the rent. On the side of her bag he had noticed 12 years ago in college. He is surprised by his ability to remember and quick intuitiveness and begins to talk to her about the law school and the largest author of books in a moment of astonishment and the attraction of the girl towards him. He suggests writing an article for her within 45 minutes, which astonishes her greatly. He enters his house and wonders how he lives in such a messy place and starts cleaning and arranging the house. This is through his ability to focus on multiple tasks at the same time, and then try to complete his failed book, which he did not finish in a while. And when he wakes up in the morning he finds himself back to normal and lethargic as usual. Then he takes what he wrote last night to the head of the magazine in the publishing house. He asks her to read only 2 pages, and if he doesn't like it, he resigns and relinquishes his privileges in the magazine. As soon as he gets home, he finds that the president has left him a message telling him that she has read more than 40 pages of his book and that she is still amazed. Eddie then decides to go to Werner to ask for another capsule, when he finds that he has been beaten and knows from him that the capsule is manufactured in a laboratory. Bringing breakfast and a suit for him, Eddie goes and gets things and returns to find the room door open, and when he enters he finds that Werner has been killed. He immediately reports the crime and decides to look for the capsule before the police arrive because Werner knows that he does not know how to cook, so he thought that he might find the capsules in the oven. And he finds it with some money and the book of the numbers of customers who ask for those capsules, so he takes all of those things, so the police catch him and check with him, and leave him on his way. Then Eddie begins with a new personality and starts to take care of his look and feel and starts dividing the pills every day with just 1 pill, and with the help of those pills he finishes a book in just 4 days. But he decides to earn more money than he earns from writing and publishing, so he goes to the stock exchange and within a few days he multiplies his money several times, but he needed more money to earn more, so he goes to Gennady, where Gennady asks for guarantees with a refund date with great interest. And actually Eddie decides to borrow $100,000 from him and starts using the amount in the stock exchange. Then he works in a trading company, and within a week, Eddie has more than $2 million in his balance. The reason is that he became famous quickly in this field, and TV shows and interviews began to bombard him, and he became the talk of the news. And he was able to return to his girlfriend Lindy. And then the moment that flew to him, which is his meeting with the greatest genius of Bursa, Carl, but he notices someone watching him all the time. Eddie began explaining how it works and that he has his own way of working and his use of a studied algorithm, which caused his success in this field. And then he offers Carl to drive him to his house, and on the way, Carl presents him with 2 files containing information from the 2 largest trading companies, and asks Eddie for his opinion on them. And when they got home, Eddie had completed the review of the 2 files and told him that it was impossible for him to control the energy market unless he controlled these 2 companies. Carl is impressed by his intelligence and they agree to meet again in order to continue their discussion. While Eddie is walking in the street, he finds himself having crossed a large period of time and crossed more than 20 buildings without realizing it. The time skipping began to continue and intensify until he found himself not remembering the last 18 hours of his day. He only remembers that he had spent a night with one of the girls in a hotel. And he tries for the first time to coexist without using the pill because of the side effects that happened to him recently. And when he tries to review the check files, he fails, so he decides to go to see Carl without using the pill and without concentrating and preparing for anything. He hears about a model in Hovo on the news and learns that it is the same girl he spent the night with at the hotel. Then he cannot complete the discussion and decides to go home immediately and finds a letter from Melissa which warns him that he has taken anything from Werner before he was killed. He asks her to meet him, and she agrees, and then they try to communicate with one of the customers registered in Werner's notebook, but he finds that all those registered are either dead or in intensive care. Except for the last name he calls, he finds a phone ringing near him at the person who is watching him, so he runs away. He arrives at the restaurant and finds Melissa in a dilapidated condition. Because of the pills then he knows that if he leaves them it will ruin his condition and lose his focus. And that he must reduce the doses gradually, or else he will face death like those who preceded him. While he is walking and before he enters his house, Gennady comes to him and beats him because of the delay in his money, so the pill falls from his hand, so Gennady picks it up and tries it, takes his money and goes. Eddie's condition begins to collapse and he goes to Lindy's workplace and asks her to bring him his pills that he hid in her house, so she has to leave him in her office and go get him pills and comes back, but she warns of someone watching her who attacks her, but she runs away from him and calls Eddie and tells him what happened. He asks her to take a pill so that she can escape. She takes one of the pills and can escape and reaches Eddie, who returns to normal as soon as he takes one of the pills. He finds Gennady, who asks him for additional doses because its effect has stunned him, so he gives him Eddie to get rid of him. He returns to Carl to allow him to deal and work with him, and after 2 months of using the pills, Eddie becomes the leader of the largest corporation management in the history of corporations. He is trying to balance his life by gradually quitting the pills and giving up alcohol. In order to be careful not to run out of pills, he resorts to a laboratory specialist to make those pills for him with the same specifications. Then a policeman comes to him to investigate the case of the model's murder, as Eddie was the last person she found with him before her death. But he quickly comes out for the lack of evidence and fingerprints condemn him. On his return, his room must have been vandalized, so he decides to use a safe, security system and surveillance cameras. Then comes the meeting of energy companies that Carl is trying to invest in. Who is waiting for the company's manager Atwood to sign a waiver in favor of Carl. But she is surprised by the presence of Atwood's wife, who tells them that he is in hospital because he is very tired and that he will sign the contract as soon as his condition improves. They decide to drive her outside where they park her car, but Eddie is surprised that it was Atwood's chauffeur who was trying to kill him. Eddie then realizes that Atwood is in the hospital because he didn't get the pills. He is then called as a crime scene in line with witnesses, and Morris brings with him the best attorney in the state. But he was released because the witness did not know him. Then he learns that Atwood has fallen into a coma, which ends the deal with Carl. Eddie then discovers that the pills are gone from his coat and learns that it was Atwood's lawyer who stole the pills from his coat. Then he sees a knock on the door as Gennady demands more pills at the time they agreed upon. Then Eddie decides to commit suicide. But he decides to search for any pill that can save him from Gennady, but he fails to do so and is forced to attack and kill Gennady and drink his blood because the effect of the pill is present in Gennady's blood. And actually Gennady regains his energy and focus and can get rid of Gennady's followers as well. Then he learns that Atwood is dead, so he goes straight to his chauffeur and tells him that lawyer Morris stole it from him, so how did Atwood die? Unless the lawyer covets the pills and keeps them for himself. Within a short time the lawyer is killed and the pills return to Eddie. 6 months later, he is nominated for New York State and publishes his best-selling book, and his friend comes to him from Advon Pharmaceuticals, which is one of his biggest funders in his election campaign. Eddie meets him, but is surprised that he is Carl, which threatens Eddie that he's reached that level because of those pills and that Carl has bought an entire pharmaceutical company because of it. Carl could have stopped making the pills if Eddie hadn't fulfilled his orders. But Eddie tells him that he is not stupid to reach this position until he becomes a toy in his hand and that he has gotten rid of her influence once and for all, and that it is assumed that Carl should fear him because he is smarter than him and can expose him and imprison him at any time.